Hello, investors and fellow Christian brothers and sisters all around the globe. This is Chillie, and welcome back to the Christian Market Watch. We have a lot coming up today. We're going to take you through a couple days worth of headline news and also a couple days worth of stock market changes since, I haven't been filming during the weekend. And so I want to just kind of patch it up for you so that you get a full picture heading into this week. So definitely stay around. All across the board today in the stock market, we do see the indices trading in the green, which is a good sign. Not much, following a bit of a hike and then sell off last week. But green nonetheless, which is great to see. And I'm hoping that we continue this momentum throughout the rest of the week. See a very similar trend throughout all of the indices that we're looking at, the charts specifically today. That is throughout the last couple of days of May. It's mainly driven by the inflationary fears from the Eurozone, which was at a record high at 8%. 8%, that's heaps. So the investors were a little bit, actually quite extremely fearful on the fear and greed chart last week. Hopefully going into this week though, we could gain some of the losses back. If we look at January of this year though, you can see that we were at much higher levels in the Dow, and we have descended from that quite a bit. So I'm hoping that this week we will see a bit of catch up. Although not much has changed in the economic climate, which we will cover in headline news very shortly. So please stick around for that. And if this type of content really interests you, then I would really encourage you to join me on this channel by hitting the like and subscribe button and also the notification bell, just so that you can be alerted every single time, first thing as I upload these videos every Monday to Friday. Moving on to the S&P 500 index, this is the US one, and we can see this flat line here being Memorial Day in the US, where they remember the soldiers who died at war and fought at war. And we can see that this Memorial Day level at 41.58 is now almost like acting as if it's a resistance level, like it's resisting going up much higher than that. So every time it passes that, it will come back down. So we definitely see that cross that resistance line quite a couple times now, 1, 2, 3, and come back down. Once again, we can see that it's made slight gains. I suppose we finished a little bit lower. I would just like to really see less fear in the market. After all, this inflationary pressures and all of these news, this is not the first time we're hearing them now. So I hope that investors are learning to cope with the situation in the market. What do you reckon? Are you bullish or bearish? Let me know in the comments, because we would love to get some consensus around how everyone is feeling at the moment. In NASDAQ, what we do see is a bit of a sell-off followed by a huge spike and back down. That's about 300 basis points. And now it's slightly up on what it was the day before, which is really interesting. And in a little bit, as we cover headline news, I will explain why, so please continue watching. Crude oil has jumped quite a bit, and it's currently at a very high level of 119 a barrel. And that is very expensive. As you can see in its history, it's not like the indices, it's just gone up and up and up and up. This is sort of to be expected because we're currently in an energy crisis, and investors are sort of expecting that to go higher at the moment. The US 10-year Treasury yield has increased to 3.04. That is very high. It's prompted by investor sell-offs. But as you know, if the US 10-year Treasury goes higher, that means that money is coming out of the government market and moving into the stock market or commodities or real estate or other asset classes. So money doesn't disappear. Money just simply moves from one asset class to another, to another, to another. And this is what we're seeing here in the US 10-year Treasury. And from the slight gains that we see in all of the other indexes, we can see where that money has been poured into, and there's a lot has been poured into crude oil. Moving on to headline news. One really interesting piece of news is basically Janet Yellen actually telling us that she got inflation wrong and that it's not transitory. Yep, that's her. And she's currently facing grilling in Congress over wrong inflation on forecast. Hey guys, she is the top person in the US Treasury, the Secretary herself. She's admitting that she is wrong about the path that inflation would take. That really speaks to me as if it's incompetence. I know it's a very harsh word, but even someone like me, who's not the US Treasury Secretary, can tell you what is happening on inflation just by looking at a few charts here and there. How could she, the top dog, get it so wrong for so long? This is almost a joke. If you're not laughing, I don't know how you make sense of this. She previously said that there will only be a small risk of inflation and that it will be manageable. And she has mentioned that there have been unanticipated and large shocks to the economy that boosted energy and food prices. And she was referring to the war in Ukraine and COVID lockdowns. And this is just basically the same narrative that they're trying to push towards you right now and blaming everything on the war in Ukraine. But you and I know that the problem has been happening in 2020 and mainly when the Fed started to print a lot more money. And just to prove a point here, just for our curiosity, Janet Yellen, have you ever seen your own little curve right here? This is the M2 money supply of US dollars in billions of dollars. And we can see this has been increasing already, and that was already bad. But when it hit 2020, it went vertically up and it's not come down, and it's continuing to skyrocket in this sort of super exponential manner. I don't know how to explain it to you, Janet Yellen, that inflation is an increase in the money supply. This is how it has increased since the 2020. And you're telling me that you were wrong and you didn't know? Most of us knew this from actually way before. At any single point in time, when we zoom in, whether we zoom in into the 1900s or the 2000s, 2008, at every single point in time, we would have said, guys, this is why our money is losing value, is because there's all this money being printed or circulating in the financial system. The more US dollars we have chasing goods, the more expensive each good will get. There is a scarcity of goods versus money here. The other chart I want to show you today is real quick. This United States inflation rate chart, and sorry, I have to zoom in and out, but I want you to see the levels that we are supposedly reportedly at. Right now, we're almost reaching 10%. Well, we're really going quite steep up here towards this 10% mark. And the last time this has hit the 10% levels was in the 1970s, and the time before that, about the 1940s. And both were marked with a lot of wars happening and then the economic depression that happened after that. Now, I don't know much of this because I'm a little bit too young to understand these wars, but look at how many wars we had. We had the Cold War, including the Vietnam War, Soviet-Afghan War, all these wars happening all in the 1970s, and that's when inflation went up because obviously, similar to today with Russia and Ukraine, we are seeing a lot of money being sent on weapons and war, and obviously then you don't have money for anything else. And who is going to fund that money that they used to send weapons around, like to Russia and Ukraine? Make no mistake, it's the American taxpayer. And because the rest of the world now is so dependent on the US, it's basically all of us are paying for these things. How do you feel about this situation now that we're in all this war and you and I have to pay that in gas prices? A lot of people don't understand that inflation is just another way of tax. The government didn't want to put up income tax rates because, income tax rates are tiered and you tax some people but you don't tax other people. So the best way to tax everybody is basically to let prices go up. If I had $100 and don't right now because I didn't bring that many notes. But what would happen is I have now taken 35 of that dollars away, and then you're left with just $65. 35 of that has been taken away, and it has been removed from the system to fund the war. Cha-ching! Thank you for spending it today. And so you think that you hold in your hand two $50 notes, and I know I only have one. I should have just took two of them. Actually, what you're holding is only this much, because the value has been eroded from it. And that's what inflation is. And that's how they fund the wars, by taking money and stealing money away from you and I in a way that we can't see or control. Because it still looks like a 50. It doesn't just put itself on a discount. So I should just like cancel it out and write the new value. If I take 35% off because of inflation, what this $50 now becomes is only 65% of its value. So 100 take away 35 is 65, 0.65 times 50. And that means this 50, I should cancel out and write 3250. And that is its new value. And that means if I take away 50 from that, what you have lost is 1750. It's like these two out of this $50, more than that has been taken away. Gone. That's I really want you to understand that, because back then, when they used to have real silver coins, what they would take, not this one, this is made of copper, aluminum, and nickel, and some really cheap, useless metal. But what they used to take was they used to cut a little triangle at the corner here in the wedge of the real silver coin, and then they would take that out, and you'll be only left with the rest of it, and then they would take that little bit and they would melt it in the refinery to fund war. And in the new ones, then they would take another bit of it and then they would mix it with other useless metals, like the one that this is completely useless. This is 100% useless metal, like copper, aluminum, nickel, and stuff like that, right? But last time it used to be real silver, and they would take the real silver and mix it with this useless metal. And then they would refine it as the new batch of coins to come out without really telling anybody that they did that. Some people did realize though, because when they scratched the coin, there was a little bit of copper that was showing, and they're like, this doesn't look like what I used to hold in my hand. And then they realized that the good money is gone from the system. It's been removed, melted off to put a new one in. Where it's mixed with all these junk metals, and not worth very much. So people started hiding the silver coins, and just let this really crappy, useless coin circulate around. Maybe at that time it might have been 90% of it was still the real silver, and then went down to 80, 70, 60, 50. Right now this is 100% useless. Let that sink in a bit. So what we hold in our hands here is not actually money. Money is gold and silver and nothing else. This is not gold or silver. This is called fiat money, and it's not money. We just call it money because it used to remind us of gold. This is fiat currency. Why is this worth $50? It has value because the government has declared that it does. It has no intrinsic value. This is worth nothing. Probably took 2 cents to print it in the press. But since the government supports it, fiat currency can be exchanged for goods and services. That does mean that in the Ukraine-Russia war right now, as a government loses power, so does your currency. Let that sink in. It's completely dependent on what the government calls it. And when US, if it keeps printing money like that and brings upon economic downturn upon itself, or another great financial crisis, and all of the other dollars that go with it, including the Aussie dollar that I have right here, all of that will go down when the US government loses power. Unless, for example, Australia makes an alliance with China and becomes a strong trading partner, so we depend on the Chinese yen. Even now, the Chinese yen is very, very linked with the US dollar because they have trade there, right? A lot of the national debt of the US is owing China money. Back in the day, many currencies derived their value from commodities like gold and silver, because gold and silver, as we mentioned before, has industrial use. Gold can be used in electronics, but obviously it's too expensive, so they use silver. And that's how it got value, because it had actually a use for it. It's based on something real and tangible, but this is nothing. Like the one day that everybody wakes up and agrees that Australian dollar is worth nothing, that's the day when the Australian dollar is worth nothing. It's not backed by your mortgage or house. When you go to the bank and you want a home loan, they basically put your house down as a collateral. Then they say, I'm gonna give you 500 grand in the loans, and then you can pay that off slowly. But if you fail to pay that off, I'm gonna take the house away. Now, if you forget to pay this off, there's nothing backing it. It's thin air. And that is why Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, has actually said that he's preparing the biggest US bank for an economic hurricane, his words, not mine, on the horizon, and advise investors to do the same. And I would really highly recommend you and I, as normal human beings, also do the same. I said there's storm clouds, but I'm going to change it, he said. It's a hurricane. While conditions may seem fine at the moment, like it's bright and sunny, but no one knows if the hurricane is a minor one or superstorm Sandy, he added. And that is crazy. And like, you and I know it's not going to be a minor one, because did you see the M2 supply curve that just went zoom and like hyperbolic up that I just showed you before from Fred? And basically you can think of its severity like you're jumping off a cliff or jumping off a building, skyscraper. And so if you have a couple stories, you jump off, you might, bruise your knee and break a bone or two. But if it's like hyperbolic high and you jump off it, you're gonna kill yourself. It could cost many lives. You better brace yourself, said Jamie. They are really starting to prepare now while everything is nice and bright and sunny and people are enjoying the beach, okay? And he's saying that this marks the end. We have officially reached the end, guys, the end of the Federal Reserve's cheap money era. That means the end of cheap home loans. Prepare for your interest rates to rise a lot as inflation is at multi-decade highs, exacerbated by supply chain disruptions and coronavirus and pandemic, and as the Fed and also the Australian government will inevitably tip the economy into recession as it combats price increases by raising interest rates. Guys, this is the picture here, and I'm giving you a heads up. So if you have debt, let me just honestly tell you, if you have debt in the hundreds of thousands of dollars on a home loan, I would pray, I would beg you, let me please go and annihilate that debt as much as you can. It might mean that you have to sell your family home or sell your dream home. It's not a dream if you have to pay interest 6%, 7%, 8, 9, 10. Trust me, not even a six-figure salary can pay that. Can I be honest with you? And they're always saying that, oh, interest rates are really low at the moment, so it's really good to get a home loan. No. That means that you don't have the flexibility to be able to withstand the storm if interest rates go up, and you might run the risk of being defaulted. So rather than a beautiful home, I would recommend you find the cheapest home you can find that you can still bear to live in, and you switch your whole family around. Hopefully you get somewhere with land that you can plant some food so that you don't have to rely on ever increasing inflationary prices. Elon Musk has a super bad feeling about the economy at the moment, because of what he hears. He agrees with Jamie Dimon, and he has started to cut about 10% of the jobs. 10,000 people are gonna lose their jobs at Tesla, the famous Tesla. And he is doing another thing. Last week he had another email saying that if you are in Tesla, you need to work for a minimum of 40 hours a week in the office. Guys, let's just have a bit of perspective here. In Australia, our full-time work from 9 to 5 is 37.5 hours. Okay, this is 2.5 hours more than that. And he's demanding at least 40 hours a week. He's saying the more senior you are, the more visible your presence needs to be. That's why I lived in the factory so much, so that those on the line could see me working alongside them. In another article, he's basically speeding up the production of this robot, Optimus. And Optimus was supposed to be finished by next year, but he's actually trying to speed that up by 1 quarter to finish on September 30th. And basically he has cited in that article that this robot will do anything that the human wouldn't do. And you would think that it's just a boring, repetitive task, but what he's really trying to say also. If you don't want to do this, we will assume that you have resigned. All of these big tech companies, whether it is Elon's Tesla or Jeff Bezos, Amazon, they really have this slavery system going on. They put a lot of AI to monitor all of their staff members and sort of like almost make the staff members act like robots without rest breaks, all of this kind of stuff, and just changing where they work whenever they like. No stability at all, nor really a lot of happiness. You just kind of do it because you have to earn a living. And this is what society might become if we do go into a great recession and all the big companies survive and the small to medium businesses go bankrupt in that recession. This is a really great risk for you and I. And I've really personally always wondered why Revelation 18 talks about the fall of this Babylon, wherever that is. All of the nations have drunk of her passions and luxurious living and committed sexual immorality with her. And basically idolatry. She has become a dwelling place for demons, everything unclean and detestable to us. Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins. I don't know where this is talking about, but I have a feeling, I don't know, like people have differing opinions as to if this Babylon is actually a city, which I think it is, maybe the headquarters, but I think it also in a sense represents the financial system as a whole, or the world systems as a whole. Globally. This bit has always made me feel a bit weird, like all of the merchants weep and mourn for this city because no one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, blah, 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 and slaves, that is human souls. And I always thought, right now, in 2022, we don't have slavery, do we? But when you look at the way that these tech companies are running their systems in this sort of no mercy, no negotiation, and no empathy kind of way, you really understand that the world under these AI systems is not what it promises to be, as if, you know, the AI could just take care of boring tasks and you do meaningful, purposeful tasks. It's not like that at all. It will simply make you work to keep up with the robot. And that's what we have really found. The more sophisticated the robot is, the more the human has to advance themselves to keep up with the robot so that we can control the robot. You'll find that the things that you need to study become harder and harder. The work that you have to do will give you more white hair this year than before. And this is the reality, not the utopia, the safe haven that everyone is imagining it would be. And so in a separate video, I'm going to show you how I am currently preparing for this economic hurricane that is descending upon us very, very swiftly. And I hope that maybe you can take that as an inspiration. I'm not saying that everyone has to behave like me, but just because I take heed to these things and I take them seriously. And so I will do my own preparations for this worst case scenario and pray and hope, like an insurance policy, that I don't ever have to put in a claim for that. And I'm going to be fine with that, with all my preparations, even if I never use it, but I would rather be with it than without. So I will see you in the next video.